Welcome to Our Drummers Musicians, your backstage pass to Melbourne's vibrant music scene. Recorded on a cosy couch in Brunswick, join us as we explore what it truly means to be a musician and speak to the diverse talents that make music in our city. Today we're excited to welcome Ryan Griffith, a renowned guitarist, composer and sound artist. Since graduating from the Victorian College of the Arts in 2001, Ryan has captivated audiences across Melbourne with his diverse musical styles, ranging from bebop and big band to swing, funk and blues. He's graced large stages, small stages, jazz clubs, the Spiegel tent at the Melbourne International Jazz Festival, and opened for iconic acts like Silverchair and UMI. Ryan's talents extend beyond performance. He's composed works for theatre, film, and major events, including the 2000 Olympic Games. His compositions have reached international audiences, released through labels in the UK, Australia, and America. He's also a respected music educator, imparting his knowledge to the next generation of musicians. Recently, Ryan's been making waves with the Hurstbridge Jazz Club, a community initiative born out of the pandemic's impact on live performances. This venue provides a platform for both local and seasoned jazz musicians, as well as emerging talents, fostering a vibrant local music scene. Join us as we delve into Ryan's many experiences with music, hear his perspectives on the local music scene, and discuss his recent album, Turn Up the Quiet, a collaboration with his life and music partner, Kimba, to celebrate over 2 decades of making music together. We want to take a moment to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional custodians of the land in which this podcast was recorded. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hey Ryan, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Luke.
Thanks so much for coming.
It's great to be here. This is such a comfy couch.
Oh, I'm glad that you're comfortable. And the introduction lives up to the experience of a guest on the cozy couch in Brunswick.
Yeah, it was really wild hearing you talk about all the different things they've done over the years, because some of it feels like it's from another lifetime, and just reminds me like how many pies you can put your fingers into as a musician, working in a city like Melbourne, you sort of, and how many different sort of iterations of, I guess, a creative experience you can be involved in, It's quite wild. Actually, a bit of a trip hearing you read all those things.
Yeah, I thought, there's like a couple different ways that I like write a little intro for people, but I was just like checking out some like old albums that you had out and found some like old interviews of yours and stuff. And I was like, oh, there's all these like interesting things. And it's like you said, like touched on so many different areas. I was like, oh, I'll just like include like, this sort of like string of different musical activities that you've done across the years. And it's always like you've had the like, sort of like jazz guitar thing as like the main consistent thing throughout. But yeah, you've done so many different interesting things at different times.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a jack of all trades, master. but no, it's true. It's like it's actually what I consider myself to be is a creative person, and so all of those sort of iterations essentially are expressions of creativity in some way or another, and whether it's the guitar being the instrument that is giving voice to that, or whether it's through music education and giving young people opportunities to find their voice in music, or whether it's, working with theatre practitioners or other artists of different mediums, or even, with the community music angle, providing occasions for people to come together around music. It's sort of, the thread really for me is the creativity, is finding that sort of that little seed of an idea that comes to you, and then running with it and just seeing where it goes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it goes nowhere, and that's okay too. But sometimes it can really like go off in unpredictable directions.
Yeah. Well, where did the seed for the Hurstbridge Jazz Club come from? Because that's like a pretty cool idea that I haven't been out there in person yet. I'm hoping to as my like health gets better. But like I've watched the stuff online come out about it, and it just seems like you've really created like an amazing space, musically and also community wise.
Yeah. So I mean, the impetus for that was really, as we were coming out of lockdown, all our gigs dried up, and I was sort of communing with other people in our area because we were quite fortunate living out in Hurstbridge. There's lots of beautiful places to bushwalk, and I'd often see other musicians, in my local community going, "Oh, how you going, man? How you traveling? Oh, no gigs, what da." And realizing actually, wow, there's a lot of creative people, a lot of really amazing players in the area that I live, and all of us, without an avenue to do what we do best, and also having a bit more time to do things like grant applications. So, in my spare time, so some artists went, well, when I released my 4 albums in lockdown, I didn't release any albums in lockdown, but I did write a lot of grant applications, and most of them got turned down, I have to say. But our local council really liked the idea of trying to foster a place for musos young and old to get together and do what we do. And so that's how the idea came about. And it's very down home, like we only run gigs once a month, for a certain months in the year, because in the little hall that we run it in, it's so hot in summer and so freezing cold in winter that we choose the sweet months and we just keep it down home, So full respect to all those people running music venues and jazz clubs every night of the week with multiple shows. That's not our scene, we're about really creating a beautiful place for our local community to come together, for musos who have a connection somehow to our local area, to put on these nights. And they're just really gorgeous. They're really fun because we just do BYO and bring your own snackos.
Oh yeah, cool.
So it's sort of like being it's like a black box theatre on the inside, like the old La Mama space, if any of your listeners are familiar with that. It's like a painted black with little cabaret tables, gorgeous little stage, but on the outside it's like an old guides hall, so it looks like an absolute dump from the outside. And then people step in, you see their faces just light up, so they go, oh wow, this is lovely. And then the music starts and the world is just shut out, and people just have really appreciated having a local event, like really top world-class musos. I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about a lot of the other people that have played there. So in our local area, we have musicians like Jordan Murray and Jeff Hughes, plus people that have had connections to the Eltham, Diamond Creek, Hurstbridge area. So many creative people, and of various genres as well, and not just experienced musos, like really, really innovative, exciting younger musos as well, high school students, people at universities as well. So that's the spirit of it, and it's brought me, given me a great, just a sort of an outlet. It's not my main gig or anything, and we're not trying to, make it a sort of viable business or anything like that. It's really about bringing community together. My son does all the photography and does the front of house.
Oh, cool.
I do the programming. We run it together.
Yep.
So it's a way of, like my son and I, and to have time together doing something fun as well. Yeah,
extra special.
Yeah.
Well, did you have any spaces like that when you were sort of growing up and first playing, like a more community centered like space for playing music, or I don't know, like a mentorship type thing, even another like community sort of led organization like this one, that was sort of fostering that for you?
Yeah, definitely. When I was I grew up in Albury Wodonga, and near the Murray, the Millawabilla on Wiradjuri country, and music was a bit of a constant in my life because my parents, my first band actually was a band with my dad, and he was a tuba player and I played clarinet. And we went around to all the nursing homes in Albury and played old time music, and it was I pretty much did it for biscuits and vanilla slice. And that was just sort of part of something that we did on the weekends.
As a duo, or was there more?
No, there were a few other instruments as well, sort of like a concert band type scenario, dance band, sort of old time dance band. And then when I picked up the guitar, me and my mates at high school, we had a band together, and that was my life. That was my identity. So we used to rehearse at a hall that was next to the Greyhound racing track in Albury, right?
Oh.
Yeah, and it had a sign out the front that said Recreation Hall, right? But the thing about this hall was that all the plants was overgrown, man. It was really wild. And so the R and the E of recreation were obscured. So the sign said Creation Hall.
Oh.
And we're just like, oh man, we loved Creation Hall so much. It was such a cool place. So we could get there and we hired the hall and we would just like rock out. But the problem was that with the Greyhounds behind us, if we were too loud when they would run the races, the Greyhounds would lose the sound of the rabbit, and so the race would stop.
Oh.
and so we had all the track officials like coming over and threatening us, like, you little bastards, cut out your rock and roll, and that just like fueled us even more. We're like, yeah, we are so punk. We are disrupting the Greyhound racing industry, like. And Creation Hall was a really rich place for us. But then our mates realized that it was a really cool place to hang out. So they would come around and it got a bit wild, like maybe a few holes got put in the walls, and Creation Hall kind of turned into a bit of like a den of wild teenage iniquity. And it just got a bit too fun. So then we went out to jam at my drummer's parents' farm, and that was a beautiful thing too. With regards to mentorship, like, I think the things that were key and remain to be important in my work with young people is opportunities to perform. Yeah. The feeling that this is a real gig, the feeling that it's not pretend. It's not like fake, so for us, we had at the time in Albury Wodonga, it used to be a very regular stop for touring bands. They just go constantly up the east coast of Australia. So they're always in Albury. Most weekends, there used to be, like kind of fairly popular bands. I'm talking like Screaming Jets, Regurgitator, UMI, Spiderbait, those sort of either indie rock or kind of Aussie rock bands. Jimmy Barnes would go through there all the time. So as a young band, there were fairly regular opportunities for us to go see music. And also, once we got our set together, to get gigs supporting these musos, Yeah. So we were pretty crap, but they needed a support band, and the local push would ask us to come support, and gradually we became less and less crap, and we started to have our own songs, instead of doing covers, and it just sort of grew from there. And so we had a lot of real opportunities, to feel like, wow, this is a real audience. This is, we're proper production, and we're doing the thing, And I think that's really important, that sense that it's authentic, and then because we were into blues and funk and that sort of stuff, through bands like Chili Peppers and Rage Against the Machine with that kind of solid groove element,
yes,
started to get into Frank Zappa and there through to jazz, and so my guitar teacher at the time was doing a Sunday afternoon gig at a pub. He said, hey, mate, I can't do every other Sunday. Do you want to come along and just sit in? Because they're looking for a guitar player. And there were these old fellas, what I felt were old fellas. They're probably not much older than me now. They were playing like straight ahead sort of stuff like, Miles and, Cannibal Adderley and some older standards, I didn't know any of that music, but I could play the blues a bit.
Okay.
So I sat in, and the trumpet player said, hey, I like what you're doing. Do you want a regular gig? And I was pushing trolleys at Safeway for my part-time job, getting like maybe $4 an hour or $5 an hour, and getting like 3 hours a week. It's like, this is crap. He says, do you want to come and play jazz music on a Sunday afternoon, get $80 and get fed? I'm like, hallelujah, I have made it. I have made it. I'm still getting paid $80 and getting fed now. Yeah. And so they took me under their wing and took me around to a lot of gigs. We did a lot of, many gigs.
Wow. Around
Victoria and other things. They were lovely old musicians, and just sort of introduced me to the world of jazz.
Wow.
And that's sort of how I came through blues into that. So mentorship is super important. It's almost like an apprenticeship, but it's more serendipitous. You're brought together because they saw something in me. They needed somebody, right? And in turn I needed them, and so now I'm in, I guess, the opposite position. I'm in a position where now I sort of see it as my duty to do that, and it's not just a duty like a sort of chore. It's a joy,
Yeah.
To where it does feel organic and natural to give those opportunities to other young musicians. Then it's my, I really have to do that. I want to do that. Yeah.
Oh, it's really special. Like to have had that experience for you, but then also I'm sure to like be able to be giving that same experience to like the young musicians coming up now, whether it's like, students or the like mentorship relationship, or, with the Hurstbridge Jazz Club, there's like a space to, encourage that. Like it's a real gig, and there's like people from all skill sets and age groups and like experience levels. Like you say, it's like it's the real gigs, and it's the encouragement and the need for each other, because you can't play the gig if you're missing whatever instrument it is that can't do it anymore. I think it's just so awesome that you're doing it, and you're creating like a great space, and you're really, really good at it. I should say too. Like I remember the first time I met you, I was 16, and you'd been asked to like I can't remember if you played the show or you were just like helping us with like the musical our high school was doing.
Yes,
I think it was like Fame.
Oh, see, that was,
remember that?
We did Fame. Yeah, that was super fun. Well, you know what? That was me just being cheeky, because I had to do my teaching rounds, right? And I had to get all these extra hours to validate my teaching time. I was like, man, I don't want to spend it doing boring stuff. I want to do fun music stuff. And that's, I was like, oh, okay, I'll play on the musical. That was like, so I was using that for my teaching accreditation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But it so happened to be really, really fun, and we're playing great music together, aren't we?
It was great. And I remember you being so kind and generous and encouraging of me in my playing. And it felt special to like get the opportunity to play with you, because it was otherwise like just, all the high school mates. And, but when we very first started playing together, I can't remember what it was, but you looked at me and you gave me this like super intense like look with your face. And I just like stopped playing because I thought that like you're really angry with me. And I was like, I must be doing something really wrong. This amazing guitarist is here, and what have I done? And you're like, what are you doing, man? And I was like, oh, like I don't know, sorry about that. And you're like, oh, it was great. And I was like, oh, but you like pulled the face at me. And it's forever stuck with me that you have this great, the iconic jazz face.
Yeah. That's very funny you should say that, because the trumpet player I was talking about before, he said to me, we were doing all these fancy gigs at like, like prestigious like university clubs, like the type where people have to come in a suit and, maybe they even have to be a certain gender and all that sort of bullshit. Excuse swearing. Anyway, he said to me, Ryan, listen, I love you playing, man. It's really great. I love you do that chunk thing behind me, and I love you playing solos. But can you stop doing the face? And I said, what do you mean? What sort of face are you talking about? And he did like this succession of like classic kind of guitar-y, that slug meme?
Yeah.
It's like that. I was like, I do that? I don't do that. And then other musicians I've played with have given me various names, which I shan't say on this podcast. It's family friendly. But I don't know, like playing music, it's a body experience. You know what I mean? So when I hear someone do something rad, like my body will, my face, I'll just respond. It's like, that's, So that must have been really weird for you, man. But
it was, it went from like terrifying to, but then you also like had the conversation with me about it, and like, because I'd never had that experience before. Like I'd played with older musicians before, but not in a way that like we spoke about things like that. And you were just like, oh no, that's because of this. Like you're saying now, like it's just the reaction to the experience that we're having, and it's great. And you were just so like, I don't know, encouraging and kind to me as like a young drummer, like who had no idea what was going on. And I can only imagine now, like what the students that get to work with you are like, and the musicians that get to play with you that are young. All these years later. For me, it was special, and it stuck with me for that was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something now. But I still remember how supportive you were of me playing, and then were happy enough to like play a show with me for like my uni stuff, and some like garden shows, and like you were always just so kind and generous, and it stuck with me all this time. I was like, wow, like here's a guitarist that is amazing, but is actually taking the time to like say some encouraging things rather than just like a critical feedback or saying nothing, and then give me the chance to play with you too. Like, thank you.
Oh, mate, thank you for saying that. It's a no-brainer for me because, like, think about some current projects I'm in right now. There's a band I'm playing called Pluck, and Pluck is a trio. It's started as 3 guitars, but now we play banjos and we play mandolins and various permutations of any pluckable instrument, right?
Okay.
Which is why we call Pluck. But the guys in Pluck are my friends, and but they're in their early 20s. One of the players is an ex-student who's just an absolutely beautiful classical flamenco guitar player. And it's not about any kind of altruism on my behalf that I'm letting them play with me or whatever. I genuinely enjoy playing with them, and I'm learning as much from the experience as they might be as well,
Yeah.
And it's just music, it's not, it is an essentially non-ageist practice. Yeah. It is by its very nature intergenerational, so it's like, in terms of the kids that we have that I work with at school and whatnot, like we have kids who are 13 coming into year 7. They might be absolute monster players, So I'm not saying to them, oh, sorry, you're in year 7, you have to be in the year 7 beginner band or whatever. I say, if you're ready to gig, let's play. If if this is your first experience, there's no judgment there either. We can still make music together. It's just it'll be a different way of doing it, So again, it's not about, it's not a judgment, and it's not, So thinking back to the fun gigs we did together, they were great. Like that garden gig together was beautiful. And playing with Owen Downey, right? And I think Owen's a great example of another fella Owen's a wonderful bass player, and he is so generous with his music. Thinking about it, the Yarra Banks jam sessions and whatnot that he runs. Yeah. A great example of somebody who can facilitate music making with people of, all stages and ages. I really admire that. I think that's what it's about. Yeah.
It's special. Owen was going to be on the podcast. He was meant to come on the weekend, but cool. he just got COVID, so
bugger.
He's just resting that off.
I'm sure you'll have a good yarn with him when the time comes. Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. Both of you, super generous and encouraging, and it's so good. Well, can I ask you about a different type of musical relationship then? What's it like making music with Kimba? Because I don't know, like you've been doing it for a long time, so like there's that side of things, but also like your life partners and you have a family together, and I don't know, it's so different to that other type of like purely musical relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
So many aspects of our lives cross over. I mean, it's sort of, there's times where we really angst over that and struggle to compartmentalize the each element, and other times where the sort of fluidity of our lives is really sort of organic and magical, There's so much to summarize in that. I guess there are a lot of examples of couples who have found love and creative sort of muse, like a muse, and also just the kind of nuts and bolts of making a living, and and perhaps it might, it's a cliche, but to it might take a musician to understand a musician. But I do have, wonderful musician friends who have partners who aren't musicians as well. So, it's not a sort of prerequisite at all to being a working musician to have a partner who's a musician who understands that. For Kimba and I, we've had a path that has been one of sort of passion for performing. So we've always we've developed on the stage together. Mm-hmm. We've always sort of jumped into opportunities to do gigs and sort of even perhaps when we shouldn't have, we've, both had a love of travel and of other cultures and languages and experiences like that. So our music has been a vehicle through which we've been able to travel. And that's been really rich. And then, with our children and with our family, trying to find a way that music can work in with the way that we want to parent, and the sort of family that we want to have. And it hasn't always been easy because society is not necessarily set up in a way to where a creative lifestyle is sort of simple, perhaps easier when the kids are younger because they can just come with you. So there was when the kids were really young, one of our kids would be on Kimba's back or Kimba on Kimba's front in a sling, and she'd be breastfeeding while we're doing a gig, and I've got the other kid on my back, and we're busking in the street and trying to sell CDs. In fact, we always sold more CDs when the kids were with us than because they're so cute, and especially if they're crying. Please come on, buy our CDs. We need to feed our kids. So it's sort of been. I guess an evolving commitment to each other and to our music and to our creativity and to our family. These things are sort of all part of the same. They're just who we are, It's just our life. But as these days, I'm since COVID, since the lockdowns and stuff, I have taken up full-time teaching, and Kimba started a business. So it's a bit different now. So we have different spheres. We're not sort of both working full-time musos together all the time. And that's great too. Kimba has a really successful business and is putting her creativity into that, and I'm putting it into the education sphere. But we're still doing music together, still doing gigs. And one of our goals last year was to record all these old tunes that we'd been playing for a long time, these lovely old gems, and just record it in pretty much live, and just release it just for ourselves. In fact, we were going to call the album Vanity Project, just to be totally upfront. But it was like a gift to ourselves. We said, hey, instead of going on a date, let's go and record, in a nice studio. Okay. And we'll just record these songs, and whatever comes up, we'll give it a go. And so we were actually really proud of that album because of what it represents for us, at this particular stage of our lives and sort of creative lives as well as family life and working life, to sort of make that, again, a recommitment. These songs want to be recorded. We've been doing them for ages. We think we do them in a cool way. Let's spend some time together. Yeah. And enjoy making that record, Yeah, so that's sort of, I guess, full circle really, where even now when it's not a full-time profession, in terms of we're not relying on it for our bread and butter. Yep. We keep coming back to the creative impulse, and that we still want to do it. You know what I mean? So there's something in us that is calling us to keep going,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'd like to ask, what do you think it is then to you to be a musician? Do you feel that, while I'm teaching, so I do the music thing after hours, or is it still all part of it for you? Because, okay, now you're not gigging and stuff full time, but you're still imparting, music on others just in a more structural way. Do you see them as distinct and separate, or I don't know, how do you feel about it, I guess?
Yeah. I think there's kind of typically two camps that I perceive when people talk about being a musician. One is I am a sort of a working musician, like a kind of mercenary, rock up, do the gig, get the cash. I'll play whatever I want, whatever you want, whatever. I can pull any sound, and I've got all the gear to play from everything from folk to rock or whatever to pop.
Yep.
That sort of working music.
Yeah, the tradist.
The tradie, yeah, that's right. And versus the artist, where, I only play my thing, I've got my sound, and there's a kind of mystical kind of aura around the artist, and I think that dichotomy is very false. It's a really unhelpful dichotomy because my experience of being a musician, especially in Melbourne, has been that you dip in and out of those worlds, and that each of those kind of playing experiences is just super fun, if you embrace the purpose of those moments, right? So for me, being a musician is actually really about honoring the purpose of that moment that we're making music together. Or creating an event or putting on a gig together, right? So if it's the purpose is community, bringing community together to go, okay, well, the music that we're going to put on, we want it to be inclusive. We want it to, so if that means we're going to play covers that people know, that's a beautiful thing, because that's the purpose of this moment, if it's about bringing a sort of like a creative impulse or sharing original music or like a recital or something like that, then the whole design of the experience is supporting that creative purpose, right? So for me, it's almost like almost theatre actually. So that when I'm thinking about, when I get a creative idea, I'm thinking about where will this reside in a moment in time? How will people experience this music? How do I want me and my fellow musicians to experience this music? Mm-hmm. And so that comes down to the space that we put it in. It comes down to is it the food and the drink? Is it the concept? Is it the time of day? If you put a gig on Sunday from 12 to 4, it's very different from putting it on a Saturday night or Friday night from 6 to 10 or from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., right?
Yeah.
People are coming with a different intention and that will influence the music, right? So I think being a musician is actually being responsive to the purpose of the music at that time. And that music is not like either completely like a sort of mercenary adjunct to like a product, nor is it this mystical kind of sort of thing that sits over there, on a mountain, like a Buddha.
Yeah.
It's part of everyday life. And so music accompanies me wherever I go, whether it's in my work, whether it's in, my gigs, whether I'm talking to my grandma, whether I call up and we sing a song together and that activates her brain because she's got dementia, right? Mm-hmm. So music it's just a way that I can navigate through the world.
Yeah, yeah.
Like a language, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. The dementia thing is quite remarkable, really. The you're watching it firsthand, like you're playing music and it's reactivating these parts of people's minds. Yes. And it's like, even with me, when my like I had the most neuro problems, I could still play a bit of music. Like,
how interesting.
If it was a song I knew, I could play along.
Really? Wow.
I did this recording session.
Yeah.
I don't know how long ago. But whilst I was mostly unwell, and I could play a bunch of the stuff because it was a live version of this album that I'd recorded 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. But then this producer was like, "Oh, and now we'll just do this little bit in 7." And then I completely lost it because it was oh, now I have to think about what I'm doing, and that's different. But it was oh yeah, we're just playing, and it just, oh, okay. So there's this whole different section, even though my body's not doing all the things it normally would, or the brain can't process information probably. But the music is just sitting in this other separate section when it's just
100%.
It's just bringing it out, or I could communicate like it. And
wow, what an amazing experience. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And for you, like, what was the effect like on your mood at that time when you realized that you could do that?
Oh, like as in that I could still play?
Yeah.
It was cool. Like it felt like this sort of like nice escape to like, oh, like I am like a real person. And I could just come in for that like half an hour or hour set or something. And if I had to carry my drum kit, that's no good because it was physically wrecking me and I'd get stuck in bed for days and aches and pains everywhere. But if someone else, or like there was a house kit at a gig or something, and I came in and I knew the music and we're just like playing like a little folk set with like Hanny Day or something, and I was just like, oh, this is special. Like things are just happening and I'm able to do stuff and this feels great. And then it would end and it sort of goes back to, okay, now we're in the struggles of other things. But yeah, when it was happening, it's pretty special.
So in that deep brain, that sort of deep sort of somatic embodied kind of brain. I see that with my grandma. Like this is totally different in some ways, but I'll call her up and she doesn't know who I am, and she doesn't, like, I ask her what did you do today? Can't remember, whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but then I'll like sing some of the songs she used to sing to me as a kid, and she's a mad old Scot,
Okay.
So we sing on the banks of Loch Lomond and other old Scottish songs, Caledonia, and so we'll do Amazing Grace or whatever.
Wow.
And Ave Maria. And she'll like just warble away in the background, and then great. So what did you do today? I won the bingo, and Ronnie came over, and we just have a bit of a yarn after that. It's like this something happens. It's like a trigger. It joins. I've told my dad and others about this, and it's like it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't underestimate that ability to trust your body or trust your your innate sense of music, that it's there.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking of all the different YouTube videos I've seen of like people in nursing homes that have like dementia and stuff, but they've given them a trumpet and brought in like a little like a guitar or something, and then all of a sudden they're playing some old standards that they know, or like they sit them down at a piano, and once they find like the note, it's like, oh, suddenly they can move their hands around the piano and play. It's just opening up this whole other side.
Remember I was telling you about the trumpet player that took me under his wing?
Yes.
He was a lovely man, but he actually had early onset dementia, right? Oh. So even when we were doing these gigs, he must have been in his late 40s, early 50s, right? Mm-hmm. And he would he'd get to the gig, all right, park his car and set up and stuff like that. He would never, ever forget a song, but he would forget where his car was. And that was sort of like the first sort of trigger. I was like, oh, mate, like, what's going on there, Mm-hmm. But then it got progressively worse. He would, like kind of just always tell you the same story, or he would, that sort of stuff, mm-hmm. right? And he didn't really have a concept of reality. That sort of cognition wasn't there, but he never forgot a lyric.
Wow.
Never. And would always, melodies, no problem, So he's like playing, all these bebop melodies and singing Louis Armstrong or Chet Baker type stuff. And it was just all there, So that sort of blew me away. I didn't understand that. I was like, how are you doing that but not that? But that just, again, the music sits in a different part of our brain,
Well, how do you feel about it with like, you're sort of at like the complete other end where you're like teaching someone music for the first time, or like giving them an instrument, or playing a young person some music?
I gravitate to like the language first sort of methods, like the Suzuki, but not in such a sort of structured, rigid way, but more that when you can put language to so it's sound before sight. Some people, really subscribe to, you should always teach reading at the same time as the actual playing, because it's really hard to come back and do it later.
Mm-hmm.
It is, I get that, but the capacity of our mind to process language is remarkable. So for me, like for example, when I'm trying to teach just strumming pattern, with the typical ways go 1, 2, and 3, 4. For me, I might go, I need a holiday. I need a holiday. I need a holiday. And so that'll be the kind of groove, teaching it in that way. So it's in language, and it seems to be more effective than sort of giving a numeric value or a kind of a visual picture. Not for every person. Different learners learn different ways, but and the other way is moving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So things like groove, and often, one of things some my students like pay me out about is it's like, okay, today we're going to have an air rehearsal. And I go, Ryan, do we have to have another air rehearsal? But what an air rehearsal is you're playing your instrument, right?
Mm-hmm.
But without your instruments, like air guitar, right?
Yep.
But you're standing together and you're having a rehearsal.
Okay.
And you're each singing your part, right? Let's do it. Boom, 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 And for those people out in Radio Land, we're like looking at each other in the eyes, and we're locking in. All of a sudden, our bodies start to move, and we're kind of, like, I'm not a great singer. I'm just rapping on a bass line. It doesn't matter. It's not the point. But we're able to forget the physical act of playing, and we're able to visualize the music in language and in our body.
Mm-hmm.
So we can step it out. We can move in ways that we can't move necessarily when we have our instruments strapped on, or you have to sit at a drum kit. You can have an air rehearsal walking down the street. And so I find it very freeing, and I think the kids, it's a bit silly, which sort of breaks down the stigma of kind of having to be a kind of cool or hip muso or whatever.
Yes.
And we can focus on things like dynamics. We can focus on tightness, of like when we're singing that groove together, were we really tight? Were we feeling the time in the same way together? Or were we on our own little track there? And stepping out a square, putting a one footstep on each corner of the square to feel 4, or stepping a triangle if you're feeling 3, or some kind of permutation of that as well.
Yep.
So that's like an embodied way of experiencing the music. And then when you put your instrument back on, invariably I find that they play better.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're in tune with each other, and they've kind of like, it's in the body then. It's
yes.
Like, yeah.
Wow.
God, that's so hippie, isn't it?
It's cool. It was making me think, I can't remember who it was, which one of my like many teachers, but they got me to do a lot of like vocalization of like the parts. Like I can't make good drum sound, but the like same idea of like, it's not about that. It's more about vocalizing the rhythms and things.
Yeah.
And I find it was really maybe it was with Dave Beck for a bit or something, but it was like, the like time and rhythm of my vocalization was actually a lot better than what I could play physically. Like I could play boom dum tap dum boom dum tap dum or something, and then I could vocalize that, and the vocalization was like, that's actually, it has a better feel to it. It's spaced out better. It's not like physically stressed and trying to like fit it in with the click or whatever the technical exercise was. And now I do it all the time. Like it just, like I'm having a play and I'm just, sort of like singing it to myself whilst I play along. And it just, I don't know, I feel like it helps me get into that like state, I guess, of like playing.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's embodying the, I don't know, it's sort of another sort of like version of what you're saying, like the you're just getting into it and you're feeling it, and it's a different way to just playing the instrument, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. And drummers, some drummers that I talk to, they'll be singing the melody of the tune. That sort of
exactly.
sort of rapping. So I guess Firstly, that does answer the question. Yes, they are musicians. Drummers are so musical, and the ability of drummers to give voice to the melody, and rhythm and dynamics and kind of visual and physical kind of hugeness to the music is so exciting. I'd definitely be a drummer if I had my time again.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man, for sure.
There's still time.
I do have a drum kit at home. I do play.
You play a little bit, don't you?
I do play a little bit. Yeah, definitely. And my son Dante, he plays drums, and we jam together. And but I do think it's there's an amazing instrument. It's so cool, man. So Mal Webb is a guy here in Melbourne.
Yes.
As well. Mal is an incredible polymath, and he does amazing things with his mouth.
Oh, okay.
And his way of expressing music through his voice.
Mm-hmm.
Be a really interesting guy to chat to some stage.
Yeah.
Much more interesting than me. But he is, he is somebody that has really made a whole musical path out of the voice and the kind of various permutations of music, both mathematical and harmonically, that you can express with your voice that's kind of difficult to express on an instrument. It doesn't really make sense on an instrument sometimes, and then you hear all that amazing Konakol stuff with from the Indian and Northern Indian tradition of, again, this is, I'm no expert, I don't know much about it, but I'd love to listen to that, that using the voice to, speak these incredible rhythms.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
It's very direct, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
I don't know, like, I have a lot of respect for singers as well in that way. Working with Kimba and knowing that she's carrying her instrument everywhere she goes, into smoky, loud bars where everyone's shouting and, all of a sudden they have to sing. Or, if they're sick or if they're feeling nervous or angry or sad, their instrument is directly affected by that, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I had Lillian Albazi on, and she was saying that, even just the menstrual cycle affects the voice. So
100%.
There's all these other like external things, but also just physically in the body, it's changing, and you've got to sing, but you sound different. And it's so many like things impacting on the singer, like doing, it's not just plugging in and or playing the piano or something where the sound is there.
That's so true, mate. And I guess I really do respect to every singer out there listening to this podcast. There's sort of innate connection of your voice to how you sound and your emotions. And I think that's why most people, I'm talking to people that wouldn't consider themselves musicians, when they listen to music, the voice is very direct. It's something that people can connect with. And often people like to hear something that's a bit vulnerable or a bit sort of that reveals something about the singer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. I like that too.
Well, I think all of my favorite singers do that. There's something about when you can hear the like person in it.
Yeah.
You connect, and it's it's not about it being like perfect or sounding like singers sound amazing, but like when you connect with the person, when their like personality comes through with their like the vulnerability of it being the voice, I guess, is like setting it up for that moment, but it's not, I don't know. I think of my favorite singers and it's just like that. It's raw and it's interesting and it's engaging and it draws me in, and it's also like amazing singing, but it's like that, like the connection to, well, I guess like the intrigue of like, there's something there. I want to know more or hear more.
Yeah. Kim and I have thought a lot about that, because actually both of us, like, we're not like, we didn't go to VCA and study jazz, Kimber and I met at theatre school. And so we've sort of, for a long time there, we had a bit of baggage about that. Like, we're not like those jazz musicians, that,
yes.
that,
You felt the pressure of the jazz police.
Well, it's there. It's there. It's quite real. But the more I've,
unfortunately, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation about the academy and about what perhaps, how those atmospheres get set up within institutions. Music as competition, music as sport, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's not the whole bag. But I think what I want to say about that is that that is something we were aware of for a while, but the more and more we let that go and found ourselves playing with these wonderful musicians anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like it was actually the fact that we were being authentically ourselves and just getting into the music, putting our voice into the music, singing with authenticity, having fun, going there when we play, connecting with the audience and with the story in the song, and I think that's something that Kimba does really well is really sort of get to the heart of what the song's about and speak to that, in an authentic way, and so. And all the rest will come. All the fancy stuff, all the sort of complex harmony and etc. You can learn that stuff, but I think ultimately, getting in touch with what you want to say and why you're doing it. That's where it's at.
Well, we've been playing this game on the podcast where each guest asks a question of the next guest.
Oh yeah,
and I've been so drawn in by our conversation, I forgot to be looking at the time.
Yeah.
So
Sorry, I've been rapping away.
No, but it's great. So I've got one very short and one medium length question from the previous guest, which is Aaron Sirianen, guitarist here in Melbourne. I don't know if you know Aaron, but he's a cool guy.
Cool.
What guitar picks do you use?
I love it.
Okay. He didn't know that the next person was a guitarist.
Oh, there you go.
He just threw that out there.
Oh, really?
And he was like, no, ask a serious question. And I was like, well.
Okay. Well, guitar picks is interesting because on my keyring here, here's my keyring. This is a gift from Kimba, and it's a little keyring, a guitar pick holder. And so if I pull this up, what I've got here are a couple of picks. This one's quite heavy. You can see that, Luke.
Yeah. Can I?
Yeah. People out in Radioland, you're looking at a Dunlop 2mm purple pick. It's quite rigid. But then also in here, I've got different picks as well. I've got this one, a bit of a thinner one, a pointier one. And so it depends on what sort of sound you want to go for. But this is my standard. Yeah, basically
the thick
purple one. But you can feel that's a bit thinner.
Oh yeah, a different one again. Oh yeah.
So, and the gypsy jazz players, and I'm playing a bit of that music sometimes, folk music and stuff, they go for a really big fat pick, and it's a very guitar-y thing to sort of talk about.
Yeah.
Tell us about your right hand, man, and your picking and your strings and stuff. But it's cool. Like that's a real tunnel a rabbit hole you can go down.
I'll build up my knowledge so I can ask the right questions to elicit a gear chat.
Yeah. But it strikes me, and I think this is something that drummers grow up with more sort of more cognitive way, that it's more of a kind of, the pedagogy of drums is a lot more sort of logical and laid out, and techniques perhaps more obvious than the way that I've experienced guitar pedagogy, i.e. how you learn and how the various nuances of holding a pick this way versus that way. There hasn't been a lot of, it's coming out now. There are some people who were really working in this space, but traditionally, drums, I'm thinking about the Harry Chapin books and that classic syncopation, all that stuff is very logical. And then all the linear stuff, what's his name, Corniola and all that, those sort of Graham Morgan and other players here in Melbourne who have really worked on drum pedagogy. It's like, it's very laid out. It's very logical. You go from boom, pat, boom, pat, then you go boom, pat, boom, boom, tat, and then you go boom, pat, boom, boom, tat, chaka, boom. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like a logical. Whereas guitar, it's like, the thing is, the approaches are either you learn a riff. It goes down, 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 down. I can play Smoke on the Water. No, you can't. It goes for 5 minutes. That's one riff. That's a classic. Do you know what I mean? That is a way of teaching guitar.
Yeah.
Or it's like, okay, you learn pop songs and you try and play along, or you learn to sight read and you go down the classical route, you know. There's different approaches nowadays with software and other things like that, but it's a lot more random. It's not as sort of structured.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And so to come back to picks, you know, like I think drummers have you're lucky, man. You're lucky. You have to lug all that gear, but I think you can learn in a lot more logical ways than guitar players.
That's so interesting. I like definitely in the like Western approach to drumming. I think even more so because of like the military drumming that has like had that, and the military is so like structured and research heavy, and you know, you've got that whole tradition that like leads into the drum kit. But then on the other side, you've got like all these other cultures of drumming where there's no like thing other than I'll play the rhythm.
Cool.
Now you can play the rhythm back with me, or you can play it along with me, and you learn the patterns. It's part of the music is just as much of like a phrase or something like that, more of the like language stuff that we were talking about before.
That's very true. I made a generalization there. I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
No, well, it's,
You're
I don't
right.
know. I think part of the like podcast is so interesting because everybody has these different experiences, and I really like being able to give the opportunity to sit down with people for a longer period of time and go like, oh, well, what were your experiences like, and how do you think about it?
Yeah.
And then you're a musician in Melbourne, and you have your experiences, and you play, you know, in the scene. So we could like be super narrow with you and say like, oh, jazz guitarist and educator. But there's lots of other jazz guitarists and educators in Melbourne, and they have different perspectives or different experiences. And
so true.
I don't know. It's just important, I think, to just hear the perspectives to grow my mind and think about different things that you've said or follow up on artists that you've mentioned to listen to.
You're opening up a really beautiful space, Luke.
Well,
good on you, man. That's awesome.
I'm having a good time.
Yay.
I'll quickly give you Aaron's second question.
Okay.
I'm just aware that I need to get you home before the peak hour traffic of Melbourne builds up, so you can get back to the far north.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself being in the music industry in 10 years' time?
Wow. That's a fantastic question, Aaron. Thank you. Okay. Well, for me personally in my life now, there was a time when my kids were really young, where I felt like, oh wow, like how am I ever going to have the time to have those long, uninterrupted days of composing or practicing, or you know, or of creative rehearsals with friends or whatever, other collaborators. As my kids get older, our awesome kids are 16, 14, and 11. Now, even now, they're like, oh, I'm off with mates, or I'm staying at my mate's house, and I'm doing this, I'm working, and I can see that there's fairly soon, and it's going to come way faster than I'll be comfortable with, is that I'll have all this time again. And, you know, provided I'm fortunate enough to have good health and you know, the privilege to do that, you know, I'll be able to throw myself into whatever creative pursuits I want, you know, and I do see that I will still want to do it. You know, I think music is still calling me in a really powerful way. I'm learning the pedal steel guitar.
Oh, cool.
And that's that is a whole nother universe of playing there. And I don't perceive I'll be ready to do a gig for probably 10 years. So if I find myself, being able, you know, kind of being able to really crank out some rad pedal steel in 10 years, I'll be super happy. You know, and I think working with young musicians, it just remind you that when you see the spark, it's like they're so keen, you know. So it's like, oh wow, yeah, that's cool. I think that inspires me to keep finding opportunities and spaces for people to come together to make music.
Well, so this will be a nice little time capsule moment to check back on in 10 years'
That would be
time.
sweet, won't it?
Yeah, see what gigs you're doing on the pedal steel or you know, wherever else like the music's taking you.
Yeah.
Well, we like to wrap up with 5 quick answer questions.
Yes.
What's your favorite venue to play in Melbourne?
The Hurstbridge Jazz Club.
What's your dream venue to play at?
I'd love to play at the Forum.
I
Haven't played there.
What's your coffee order?
Flat white.
What's your favorite place to get food in Melbourne after a gig?
After a gig. Okay, at the moment, there's a really awesome kebab shop up on Sydney Road, just on the north side of Pentridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, banging.
And I'm going to give you a variation on the last question that El Kerr has suggested that I add. So what's one piece of advice that you'd give to your younger self that your younger self would actually have listened to?
Look after your mental health. And I think I would say that you don't have to have it all sorted right now.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your thoughts on so many different things. I feel like I could keep chatting to you, and I have so many more questions for you. And you've just been so generous to share some like personal insights and thoughts. And you're an amazing musician, and I love all the different things that you've done and the spaces that you're building. And it's exciting watching it. And I really appreciate that you've maintained the connection enough to come and have this chat with me.
Oh, thanks,
today.
Luke. No, thank you for the opportunity. It feels really lovely, man. Thank you.
Well, Ryan, if people want to like listen to your music or come out to like the Hurstbridge Jazz Club, what's the best way for them like to get gig updates or connect with you for to have you play at an event or session or something like that?
So Hurstbridge Jazz Club, we have a Facebook page. That's probably the best way to get in touch. Otherwise, if you are interested in Kimba or myself or whatever, our various projects, again, probably Facebook and Instagram is the best places. So Kimba and Ryan, we're on Facebook and Instagram. Otherwise, you can get in touch with the wonderful host of Our Drummers Musicians, and Luke can put you in touch with me.
Yeah, I can also do that.
Yeah.
Who else? Someone else has roped me into this service, so I'm also very happy to provide it to you.
Yeah.
Oh, you and Tony Floyd.
Okay, cool.
But I'll put links in the Facebook page and stuff.
There's a guy who makes faces when he plays, right?
Yeah. Often extremely excited faces.
Yes, that's right. That's right. I love that. We make excited faces back at each other when we get to play together, which is too rare, but awesome.
Well, I can't wait to the next time I get to see you play. And thanks so much, Ryan. This has been great.
Awesome, brother.
Thanks for joining us on Our Drummers Musicians. I hope you enjoyed getting to know another Melbourne muso like I did. Help us grow by leaving a review, share the podcast with friends and family, and subscribe on our website for extra info. Got a guest you'd love to hear on the show? Please let us know at ourdrummersmusicians.com. See you next time. Yeah.
I got to think of one.
Sorry, I forgot to ask.
That's all right.
What question would you like to ask the next guest?
Okay. How important is your identity in your music?
What do you mean by that? Just for me and a few listeners.
Yes. So, for example, to what extent does your identity define your music? And when I say that, I mean, in terms of myself, I'm a 44-year-old, dude of pan-European descent, fairly privileged, have had struggles with various things in my life. How much does that define the music that I can make? I've lived in Japan. I've lived elsewhere around the world, but I'm interested to know to what extent do musicians derive inspiration and their sense of their musical identity from their what they perceive to be their identity.
Yeah, interesting. I wonder who get the question. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, brother.